Hello, freethinkers and libertarians. This is Colonel Liberty. I want to tackle a heated and controversial topic, the idea of criminalizing Islamophobia and how it undermines our fundamental right to free speech. Recently, Keir Starmer, who is now the Prime Minister of Great Britain, although whether Great Britain is the Great Britain that it once was is up for debate, and London Mayor Sadiq Khan have been pushing the narrative that Islamophobia isn't tolerable and needs robust government action. They appeared in a video on the Labour Party website and is clearly a propaganda piece for the virtue-signalling socialist that Keir Starmer really is. You have to remember that Keir Starmer comes from the Jeremy Corbyn school of hard, aggressive socialism. And you'd be hard-pressed to find a single bone in either man's body that looks to champion the British people's interests. Instead, it's about their own narcissistic virtue-signalling interests instead. Now, of course, Sadiq Khan would be pushing this narrative, given he is a practicing Muslim, and so he has a vested interest, and some would say a conflicted interest in his role as Mayor of London, in pushing this divisive narrative rather than representing all Londoners of different creeds and races. And of course, given that Christians in Britain, and remember Great Britain was once a Christian country, are now a minority in their own country at less than half the population, Sadiq Khan doesn't seem to be advocating for London Christians and their interests, now does he? Neither does Starmer. So the gross hypocrisy and frankly discrimination of a vast proportion of the British population is staggering. And the prejudice that these two have is just frankly unbelievable. But here's the problem. Outlawing Islamophobia not only makes no sense whatsoever, but it also plays directly into the hands of extremist groups like the Muslim Brotherhood. Let me break this down. The term Islamophobia was created to mirror homophobia and anti-Semitism, but it's fundamentally flawed in its construct. While homophobia and anti-Semitism refer to prejudice and bias against people, Islamophobia targets criticism of a belief system. It's a smokescreen by people to say, you can't criticize our religion, but go right ahead and criticize Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, and so on. But in a free society like ours, we must have the right to criticize and question and even mock any organized religion without fear of legal repercussions. It's a fundamental that needs to be upheld, and it has been upheld for centuries in Western Europe. It's called freedom of speech. But we all know that freedom of speech is under constant attack, and Starmer and Khan are no champions of freedom of speech. The notion of Islamophobia mixes up the legitimate critique of Islam with hatred towards Muslims, and it's a dangerous path to tread. In the UK, the 2010 Equality Act and the 2006 Racial and Religious Hatred Act protect individuals of all religions from discrimination and hatred. The laws exist today. But of course, politicians being politicians, and in our day and age of over-government and regulation of everything in our lives, want to control us even further. What we don't need are additional laws that stifle free speech and protect ideologies from scrutiny. Here's the kicker. The push to criminalize Islamophobia often comes from Islamic groups who seek to shield themselves from any form of criticism. The Muslim Brotherhood, which is an anti-Western global movement banned in Muslim countries like Egypt, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and plenty more, has been instrumental in promoting the Islamophobia narrative to advance its own agenda. This so-called Muslim organization, or some would call it a terrorist group, which isn't banned in the UK by the way, is openly homophobic and misogynistic, and it uses the term Islamophobia to silence critics and pursue their extremist goals. Keir Starmer, with his background as a prosecutor and lawyer, should know better. He should be able to distinguish between Islam, a religion, and Islamism, which is a political ideology. Yet his track record shows a lack of understanding of this important difference. Then again, maybe I'm setting my expectations too high for this champagne-sipping socialist who's happy in his role virtue signalling to British taxpayers that pay his salary. Today, he's a Prime Minister of Great Britain and advocating for wars that will only embolden this terrorist organisation. He has supported Islamist organisations and worked closely with figures like Jeremy Corbyn, who infamously called Hamas his friends. If we criminalise Islamophobia, we risk creating a society where legitimate criticism is suppressed. Consider the case in Germany of a judge who refused to grant a Muslim woman a divorce from her abusive husband, citing cultural norms supposedly backed by the Quran. Such decisions influenced by the fear of being labelled Islamophobic could become more common. This not only harms the victims, but also emboldens extremists who exploit these protections. People in Britain or any country in the West for that matter do not need this. Freedom of speech is the cornerstone of a free society. Today the focus is on Islamophobia, but what's next? Will we be banned in questioning gender inequality, wife beating, unfair divorce laws, inheritance disparities, or reactions to people moving away from the Islamic faith? Criminalizing Islamophobia is a step back into the dark ages and making it harder for reformist voices within the Muslim community to be heard. These laws do not protect Muslims. They protect extremist ideologies that seek to control and manipulate. Banning the Muslim Brotherhood and its affiliates would do more to protect moderate, patriotic Muslims than any new law could. By removing the cancer of extremism, we can promote better relations between Muslims and non-Muslims. And let's be honest here, there are good people in Muslim communities all around the world. Unfortunately, their voices are often drowned out by Islamist banner-waving protesters shouting for jihad and Sharia law on the streets of Western countries. The last thing that people need in the UK are more radicalised Islamists and jihadis protesting on the streets of London, Bradford, Leeds, and other cities because they've become an emboldened group of people who are led by a Prime Minister and a London Mayor who are dog-whistling to a minority of people because of their misguided virtue signalling. We've already seen what that's like in recent years, and I, for one, don't want to see it happening anymore. Criticism and open discussion are vital for a healthy, free society, and we must fight tooth and nail for it and push back the efforts by virtue signaling elite narcissistic politicians who would seek to control every aspect of our lives. Thanks for listening, and if you believe in protecting the rights and institutions in Western countries like the UK, Ireland, Australia, and the USA, then join me and subscribe. It helps me grow this channel and connect with amazing people like you who are patriots. This is Colonel Liberty, signing off.